Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to April's Calumet Revisited Forum. I'm going to have to check on while signing in a second. Some reason. Okay.
Hey, Mike, this is Marianne. Do you need to let me into the meeting or anything? Because I'm on a screen where I've got a little circle that keeps going round and round.
Yeah, you're here. You're okay. I'm having trouble finding in participants. Can Valerie, can you sign in people? As a,
Well, for
can
that,
anyone other than me sign in people?
I think you'd have to make me the host or do multiple hosts.
Okay. I think I've got it now. I should be okay. Let me continue. I am Michael Bowes of the Association for the Wolf Lake Initiative, and I am co-host with Dr. Valerie Pennanen of Calumet College of St. Joseph. Calumet Revisited is funded in part by the Indian Humanities and the National Endowment for the Humanities. Before we hear from tonight's speakers, are there any announcements? If not, I have one. Ollie's Calumet Nature Tuesday, April 18th, 7 p.m. It will feature Marla Salad, Educational Program Specialist of the Chicago Academy of Sciences, and Peggy Notebart, Nature Museum, on environmental sites on the southeast side. Licensed teachers in Indiana can earn an hour of professional development credit by participating.
Michael, can you repeat that, please? Because there's a lot of background noise. Not everyone is muted.
Okay.
And I didn't hear the first part of it. I'm sorry.
Ask everybody to mute. Okay. All right. Let me just continue from there. Just remember that licensed teachers in Indiana can earn an hour of professional development credit by participating. The presentation this evening is being recorded. The recording will be available within a week on Ollie's website. Would everyone please remain on mute? After the presentation, we will have a question and answer session. Tonight, we will hear from Dr. Phil Willink, fish biologist of the Illinois Natural History Survey, Bill Smith of the Indiana Dunes National Park, and Marianne Koslowski, co-steward of the Edgar Woods Nature Preserve, who will zero in on several topics. We will begin with the 2002 BioBlitz that found high level of biodiversity at OMW Power State Recreational Area. Efforts to replace lawn with native species, experiences in raising monarch butterflies, and reasons for recent insect and bird declines. We hope to get through all of that. by the end. And so I would like to begin by giving some background to the term BioBlitz. And there was a very good article written by Susan Post of the Illinois Natural History Survey. And she wrote that soon after the William Powers BioBlitz. And so I'm going to be reading from that and to bring everybody up to date, because I attended both the William Powers BioBlitz and also the one in Indiana Dunes that followed a year after that. And we'll have Bill Smith here to talk a little bit about the Indiana Dunes BioBlitz. So what is the BioBlitz? A BioBlitz, or biodiversity blitz, is a 24-hour rapid assessment of what is living in a particular area at a given point. To those who participate in or witness one, a BioBlitz is more like ecological entertainment, part scavenger hunt, part marathon race, part story, and maybe even part Mission Impossible. Biologists come together at a given place for a 24-hour marathon of skill and endurance, where the goal is to find and identify as many species of plants and animals in that area as possible before the clock stops. It is also a chance for the public to see firsthand how real science is put to work. It is not often that citizens go to see what scientists do, perhaps even get to help. The record to beat for the number of species was set in on July 4th, 1998 at Walden Pond, where they identified more than 1,900 species. And then in Illinois, the first BioBlitz was held at Robert Allerton Park near Monticello, Illinois. And that was in 2001. And then both the Field Museum and the Chicago Department of Environment attended that 2001 BioBlitz because they had in mind that replicating it here in 2002. The Calumet BioBlitz headquarters was at William W. Powers State Conservation Area, located on the southeast side of Chicago in Cook County. The BioBlitz included the Eggers Woods Forest Preserve, Powderhorn Lake Forest Preserve, and Wolf Lake, which was separated into several sections by dike, which is separated by dikes. The data collected at Calumet were meant to provide a baseline for management to spearhead conservation decisions and to further research initiatives in the area. And I just want to repeat what I said at first, because I'm reading from an article by Susan L. Post within a month or so after the Wolf Lake BioBlitz. The data collected at Calumet were meant to provide a baseline for management, to spearhead conservation decisions, and to further research initiatives in the area. And at the field museum at Wolf Lake, groups involved in that BioBlitz was the Field Museum, the Chicago Department of Environment, the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, Chicago Wilderness and Forest Reserve District of Cook County, and the Chicago Park District. More than 130 scientists from the Chicago area and Champaign participated. The final species count for Calumet was 2,257. So at that time, it was at that time, and I don't know how many BioBlitzes they've had since then, or what that species count even means anymore. But it wasn't as many as had been previously recorded. And so that's just kind of a summary of what a BioBlitz is. And it kind of was important to me because I recall that at the BioBlitz, I ran into someone from the Calumet, from the US EPA, who informed me that they had received enough money to clean up Calumet container, so which had nothing to do with the BioBlitz, but it was great news, and that's the one thing that was the most important that I remember from that event. But Phil Willink was there, and I think this was the first time I had met you, was at the BioBlitz. And so what are some of your memories of the BioBlitz?
So, Michael, if you let me share my screen, I actually found a presentation I made about the BioBlitz.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not don't lower your expectations, because I looked at the date on this and I made it 20 years ago, and I first looked at it again like 10 minutes ago when I found it. So I can go through part of it, and it has some pictures.
Okay.
So let's see if I can share my screen. Let's see if this works here.
I think you should be able to.
Yeah. Okay, that's there. Let's see. All right, does that work?
Yes. If I'd known you'd had that, I would have asked you to start the program.
Well, your description was better than mine. You were more prepared.
Okay. Well,
Anyway, I'll go through some. I have some pictures actually from the same article, and I'm not. Let's see here.
okay.
Let me see if I can get through this.
But that
here.
was a nice article. Is she still there at the?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay.
And so this is, you don't need to see where Wolf Lake is. I think everybody knows. And this is Chicago. This is what everybody think Calumet's all about. So I always put that in there. But then here's Wolf Lake right here with a bunch of pictures, and you can see natural areas, boat launch. So there's a lot of recreational fishing, and then industry next to it. I focused on fish. So here's a bunch of people fishing. Oh yeah, and hunting there. What is it? The one place in the Chicago city limits you can actually hunt. We have some muskie and pike here. It was probably at that time most known for monk parakeets. I don't know if they're still around or not.
Yeah, they are.
Still get the big nest down there. But anyway, so here's some actual pictures from the BioBlitz. And as Michael said, here's 130 scientists. This was someone looking at aquatic insects, if I remember right. Here is someone from the Field Museum. Sorry, he trapped a possum. I don't know what these people are doing. And down here, these are entomologists being filmed. And they put up a screen and they catch bugs and then they ID'd a lot of bugs. But here again, I don't recall that is. But, and as Michael mentioned earlier, public outreach is really a big part of this. They are certainly scientists doing science. But then I don't know how many visitors came. It's got to be in the hundreds to see what was happening. And some of them could participate in some of this. And there are a lot of outreach activities and there are tents with kids activities and stuff like that that various people could do. There's a lot of media coverage. So it was what, on TV, it was on the radio, there's a bunch of newspapers cover. So it was a lot, gave a lot of publicity for Wolf Lake in the Calumet area. This is what Susan Post wrote that Michael was reading from earlier. I was thinking I had a PDF of it. I don't, but if someone's interested, I guess we could probably scan it, or it may even be out there at some point. And it was really nice write-up that she did, and it was a good description that Michael already read. And this is probably some of the stuff that Michael read right here. Once again, here's some people doing fish work. This is a book author right here. No, none of these pictures. This is actually U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Oh, this is John Rogner, who's now a deputy director of the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. This is Joel Greenberg, who wrote a natural history of the Chicago region.
Wow.
And let's see, there's someone with a snake. I think he's from Champaign. I don't remember. And when I say participants on this slide, this is just field or fish people. So we had, what do we have here? Several different agencies all represented here. Illinois Department of Natural Resources, Indiana Forest Preserve was there, Fish and Wildlife, Field Museum. I won't go too long. And so I think earlier Michael said, let's see here, 2,257 species of those, 33 were fish. And so I'm not going to go through the rest of this because I go through the history of Wolf Lake and all kinds of other stuff like that. And you can certainly ask me about it. Let me try to find some. Those are some more interesting pictures. I'm going to stop sharing right there. So anyways, yeah, that's sort of the BioBlitz. It was 24 hours. Some people actually did a lot of work at night. Fish people did not. We're good. We'll work it during the day. But we talked to a lot of people and we covered a lot of areas. And so it was good. And as Michael, it was also good to go out and meet people and network and do all these other types of things with different people that you don't always see all the time, and meet new people as well.
Okay, I was waiting for Bill Smith to come on. And I don't, let's see, I got a chat from somebody. Okay, so maybe when he comes on, we can talk a little bit about the BioBlitz at the Indiana Dunes. I can recall that they had less than 1,000 species, but that's easy to understand because I don't think they have the diversity of plants and animals that we have at Wolf Lake. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about was the converting lawns to native species. And Marianne Koslowski is here to talk about her experiences in doing that. And then I'll have Mary Kuzniar talk about her experiences. But Marianne, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm getting a big echo right now. I don't know if you're hearing that or not. No?
I'm kind of hearing it from you.
Okay. You know, I'm not sure what the heck. Goodness. I think I need to sign out and sign back in again because this echo is driving me nuts. And if it's driving me nuts, it's gonna drive you guys nuts.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, wait, Joey, what are you doing? Yeah. I do. Let me see. I leave. Leave.
Bill, while we're waiting for Marianne, I just had a question. Was there anything that you found there, any species that was interesting at the BioBlitz?
Well, I think another thing is that to prepare for that BioBlitz, I went through and tried to find what information I could find either in the literature and in the Field Museum fish collections about Wolf Lake to try to get a good idea of what we should find, what we could possibly find, all that sort of stuff. And what ultimately happened is I got a publication out of it. So I actually wrote a scientific paper, and it wasn't just on the BioBlitz, but the data from the BioBlitz was a foundation of that then led to this paper that we are now using.
Okay. No,
That we're now using to make a lot of decisions associated with Wolf Lake through Owly, and we're incorporating it into a documentary. So this BioBlitz, the fish surveys we did there, sort of spawned this whole thing that has been going on and on and on, and it's really been very educational, looking at how the region has changed over time, how the fish community has changed over time, what we can learn about it, and then how or what we should do in the future.
okay. Marianne?
I'm
Marianne, I think the problem is that I have you down here twice for being here.
I have left the meeting 3 times now, and every time I sign in, I get what you're seeing right now. So I'm not sure. The only thing I can think of is to sign out, shut down my computer, and try to get back in again. I just don't know what to do.
Okay, why don't you do that?
Okay, here we go.
Okay, do you want to talk a little bit? We'll turn this over to Mary Kuzniar, and she can explain her experiences in replacing a lawn with native species.
Hello, I'm Mike's wife, and Mike and I have lived in this house for almost 15 years now.
When we first moved in, we had the city plant a beautiful oak tree on the parkway in front of our house. It's from the approved list and it's called a Skymaster oak. We really didn't do anything with the lawn because neither of us is a big fan of lawns, and we had moles and it never looked very good. And we just didn't want to put the money and the time and the effort into it. And we always talked about replacing it with something native and self-sustaining and something attractive that would look good in the neighborhood. So after many years, we sort of came to some conclusions about what we wanted to do. And as luck would have it, we didn't do it too soon because I guess it was about a year ago, the sewer in the lawn in front of our house needed to be repaired. So everything was dug up by the plumbers. Most of it was dug up. So if we had done it earlier, we would have wasted all that money. So that was a good thing, I guess, that we didn't. But that got the project rolling because we had to do something with it at that point after they put in a new sewer tile and replaced the dirt. So we looked around, and I guess we had several criteria in mind. We wanted something native, first of all. And we didn't want anything that would spread to the neighbors' lawns because we love our neighbors and they put a lot of money and time and effort into their lawns. And we didn't want seeds flying around from our stuff into their lawns, or, you know, roots that would cause plants to pop up in their lawns. So one day we were at Menards in Hammond, and we happened to notice that in their little islands out in parking lots, they have creeping juniper. And we thought it was attractive and it's low growing. We didn't want anything very tall. So we looked into it, and it turns out it is a native plant. And so we got a hold of a landscape designer who hooked us up with a landscape company who was able to provide the plants. They came out and they enriched the area with mulch and planted 9 of the creeping juniper plants in sort of like a tic-tac-toe formation. And that was last, I guess about the middle of last summer. So until the end of the summer, they seem to be growing very well. And, you know, we would, since it was the first year of the planting, we did some watering and, you know, tried to nurture them along. We didn't get a lot of growth out of the plants themselves, but they produced tons of berries, which the birds and the squirrels loved. So that indicated that they were healthy plants. We're just waiting now to see what happens when the warm weather comes in. We're hoping that they'll grow and spread out. They do, they should spread out to fill the entire lawn area. But, and then maybe if they go off onto the sidewalk, we'll have to nip off the branches. But they won't generate new plants through the roots or seeds. So it seems like it's for us, it seemed like the ideal solution. And now we're just waiting to see how it all turns out. I don't know if anybody has done anything like this before, or if you have any comments about what you have done.
Sorry, I just unmuted myself. I'm in the midst of an experiment.
Okay.
And I have a small patch of lawn in my backyard. I've got a patio and garden areas, and I'm in Whiting, so my backyard is very small. But there's a patch that was 5 feet by 11 feet, and I had grass there. And it turned to, I don't know what, there's stuff growing in there that's not grass anymore. I thought since it wasn't touching anybody else's grass that it would be like turf, and it never turned out to be turf. So I got, I was about ready to take action on having it dug up so I could plant something else. And then I get emails from the Thornton Thorn Creek Audubon Society, and there was an instruction in there about how to make a little patch in your backyard of native plants. And what you do is you put down like 5 layers of newspaper, you wet the newspaper, and then you just pile it on with leaves, like you do this in the fall. So I was begging my neighbors for their leaves. Anytime I saw a neighbor with bags of leaves that they had raked in the fall, I ran over to them and said, "Oh, can I have your leaves?" And they all thought I was kind of nuts, but I dragged all these leaves over to my backyard, and the instruction said, just keep piling it on. It's going to come, kind of, you know, smush down over the winter, and then in the spring, just plant into it. The Thorn Creek is also had, or it is having, or did have this spring, a native plant sale. So like in February, they had, you had a list of all the plants that they were going to have available, and you had to pre-buy them, and then they're going to be available for pickup in May. So you're probably going to wonder what I got, and I don't have the list in front of me, so I apologize about that. But I selected about maybe 5 or 6 plants, and I'm going to go, because I really don't know what I'm doing. You know, I mean, I'm not much of a gardener, but I thought putting native plants in was going to be a really good thing. So I'm going to get some more plants depending on how these go that I get from Thorn Creek. And I'm kind of excited about it. The other aspect of this project, you have to kind of fence this off because they are leaves that you're piling on. And so I made a little makeshift fence out of chicken wire, just with, you know, stakes of, you know, put a stick in the ground and then chicken wire around this little area. And it was fine. So I'll be able to report in the coming months how this works out. I would love to have my front lawn something other than lawn. And I didn't really think about getting a landscape architect. I don't know if that's an expensive proposition. But one of the things that I read about somewhere, that something called red thyme is a nice, like, flat thing that you can plant, and it's a nice color, and it wouldn't hurt anything if you walked on it. And so I don't know if that's something you'd put over a whole lawn. Like I said, I don't have a huge lawn, or, you know, if that's just for little patches or what, but that kind of intrigued me too. So I'm kind of in the early stages of this, but I just wanted to share that because I think that's a very exciting proposition, is to get rid of the lawn.
Yeah, I'm sure Marianne can offer us both a lot of advice. Our next project is our parkway, which is in the shade of that beautiful oak that we had planted. So we need a different kind of plant than the creeping juniper. There's also sort of a little trapezoidal part of the parkway between the walk to the street and our neighbor's driveway. I think we've got a shrub picked out that we're going to have someone plant there for us. But if Marianne can answer some of your concerns and maybe help us out with this shaded parkway area. Marianne, you want to take it away?
Well, actually, I did put together a presentation, and I'm afraid I joined late in the conversation just because of the problems in connecting to Zoom. I think since the last time I used it, there must have been updates, and I think that's part of what got me all messed up. But how about if you would like to repeat the questions, I'd try to answer them, and then I could do my presentation, whatever order you think most appropriate.
Give a group presentation. I don't know if you want to just go ahead and do your presentation and maybe we'll answer our questions.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen then.
Okay.
Let me,
Go ahead.
okay, your screen sharing, yes, slideshow. Okay, so here we go. This is my presentation for today. So it's lawns into native gardens, and the pictures you're going to see here are from a native garden from a place I used to own. So this picture here includes, you might recognize the white trillium and the large flowered bellwort, the yellow plants over in the corner. So I just kind of broke down working with native plants into, let's say, 4 big areas. So there's resources, just trying to figure out what it is that's available in native plants and, you know, what you might need, planning your own yard, getting the plants, and then a history of a garden, which is one garden, my garden. And oh, by the way, if I do not identify the plants in the background, stop me and ask me for an ID, because that's all part of this presentation. So the leaves you're seeing here are from Rosa satigera, which is Illinois rose. And this can get to be quite a big plant. It's available for viewing there along the paths if you walk through Eggers Grove. Rosa satigera can be told, you can distinguish this from other roses because the leaflets are 3 as opposed to 5 leaflets in the compound leaf, or 7 or 9 or 11. And this is, it turns a beautiful red, as you can see, in the fall. Okay, resources. So you can use books or the internet. Institutions have a lot of information on their websites. And of course, believe it or not, nurseries have very, very extensive websites in many cases. The picture here is of anemone. It is also known as thimbleweed because of the way the seed pod looks like a thimble when the seeds are ready. Okay, resources in terms of books of the internet. One of my favorite books is, I don't know, are you seeing? I'm trying to see if I can minimize that. Okay, so one of my favorite books is the 100 Easy to Grow Native Plants by Lorraine Johnson. But I use that and the Keith Nowakowski book, Native Plants in the Home Landscape. And it's important to get books which focus on the temperate, the growing area that you're in. I mean, you do not want a book for the entire United States because that isn't really going to give you what you need necessarily. But these two are two of my go-to books for just finding out about native plants. The other books here also deal with native plants, but through another lens. So they deal with what native pollinators, bees, butterflies, moths, beetles need to grow and thrive, and what birds need. So native plants, but through a different perspective, a very interesting perspective. One of the books I couldn't find in time to create this slide was Requiem for a Lawnmower. It's a wonderful book, just a bunch of essays about changing a lawn over into a native plant, or just a garden. And in addition to resources, of course, there's the internet. But one of the problems with the internet is, for instance, I thought I was being very specific, and I typed in best plants for a rain garden in Illinois, and I ended up with 21 million hits. So you need to, the internet can be a useful source if you know how to limit what you can find. Okay, here you're looking at the plant is right there in the center, little blue stem. This is one of my favorite grasses. It's a beautiful blue-green during the growing season, and then in the fall, it turns this lovely pinky bronze color, and the seeds on it just glint in the sun. It's a gorgeous plant, does not get really tall, usually between 2 and, like 2 and 2.5 feet. And it's just, I think it's a great plant, for a native landscape. Now, what this slide does, though, resources and institutions, part of what you really want to know, oftentimes, if you're going to start a native plant garden, is what does a plant actually look like? And all of these institutions have wonderful native plant gardens that you can go and visit in season and just see the plants before you buy them. One of my favorites is the Field Museum. They have converted acres of lawn into the Rice Gardens, named after the benefactors of the garden. And it's really a spectacular series of gardens on the north side of the Field Museum. And of course, the Botanic Garden and the Morton Arboretum also have specialized woodland gardens, I think wetland gardens and prairie gardens with native plants. The Peggy Notebart Nature Museum there just north of Lincoln Park Zoo has trails with, just surrounded trails through their native gardens around the museum. The Lurie Garden in downtown Chicago uses both native and non-native plants, but it's also a great place to see native plants. And then the Chicago Park District has a lot of nature areas, and they are constructing native plant gardens in many of their parks. The other places, and all of those, except I think for the Park District, but everything above the Park District also provides information on their websites about native plants. My favorite one to go to is the Field Museum. That's my go-to site for information about native plants. Now, in addition, I think someone in the chat mentioned Wild Ones. Was that you, Lisa? They are a wonderful organization. They were founded by a woman in Wisconsin, and they're based out of Wisconsin, but they've got chapters all over the country. In fact, there is one in West Cook County, and I think there's a Gibson Woods chapter in Indiana. But joining that society is a wonderful way to just get information on native plants and to be aware of their plant sales. Audubon Great Lakes also has information about native plants, clearly, what benefits birds. And then the Xerces Society focuses on insects and what native plants really help our native insects. The Xerces Society also put out one of the guides, one of the books that I use for looking at native plants. Okay, next slide. Oh, and this was just a map to show you just how many places the Chicago Park District has started native gardens or is just trying to restore natural areas. And I focused here on the south side. So there's quite a few places. But Big Marsh is really notable because they now have the Ford Environmental Center, which is staffed, I think, 7 days a week. And some of those people really know their native plants. So that might be a good source as well for going for information. Okay, now we're talking about nurseries on this slide only because of their websites. Possibility Place has a great website. It is a retail and I think a wholesale native plant nursery based in Moni. But their website offers, I think, 400 or so native plants, but you can go into their search mode and filter out. So you can filter for soil type, whether you want shade plants, whether you want plants for a wet area or a dry area, or how tall you want your plants. And then it just comes up with a list for you. It's really a very powerful tool for just helping you focus on, what kind of native plants might work in your yard. A similar website is that for ISIL native plants. Piso Associates are, people who have been doing environmental work. I know the Forest Preserve District uses Piso Associates for work in the forest preserves, but they know their native plants. Just about any nursery has a website, but I like these two the best. Oh, and the plants that you're looking at behind with the berries, that is starry false Solomon seal, and the berries turn a deep burgundy when they are completely ripe. This plant gets to be maybe 18, 20 inches tall or so. It's a great ground cover. All right. So we've collected a lot of information now about plants, what might work in our yard. We've looked at plants at, the Field Museum or wherever, and now we're planning our own yard. And I've just listed here 2 sites. Both of these links link you to the Field Museum, which, as I say, it's got so much wonderful information about native plants, monarch butterfly gardens, just everything. So I've just offered these 2 websites here. But the background here is partially my backyard and partially the forest preserve. You can see my shed, well, a long time ago from when I lived. The big tree up on the left, that was my big bur oak, and right next to it was my beautiful hickory. Okay, so from the Field Museum website, here are a list of questions to ask yourself when you are planning, your own garden. There's a lot more information under these bullet points on the website. So if you're looking for information. By the way, the picture is another picture of thimbleweed. This was a lone thimbleweed at sunset. Okay, getting the plants. I list 3 nurseries here that have good reputations in Chicago for providing native plants. I list the Botanic Garden, Morton Arboretum, and wild ones because, as I believe it was Lisa mentioned, and I guess Eve, you had also talked about, these institutions hold native plant sales, usually in the spring, late spring. I know that the ones for the Morton Arboretum and the Chicago Botanic Garden, oftentimes, if you don't get there right at the beginning, the plants are gone if you come for the second day or even late in the first day of the plant offerings. These are very popular sales, despite the prices on these plants, because these plants are not cheap. Wild Ones also has sales, but the Field Museum used to give away native plants. I think logistically that got to be very difficult. So I think in the future, though, they are going to be giving away seeds from their native gardens, and they have a lot of species of plants in their native gardens. So that's something to follow up on. Other ways of getting the plants, the North Branch Restoration Project is a group of stewards and volunteers who take care of the Forest Preserve District sites along the North Branch of the Chicago River. And they knew that from just hard experience that there were plants that they could never collect seed from to sow in newly cleared areas in the Forest Preserve. They could not collect seed from certain plants because the seeds dropped too fast or the plants were hard to find. So they entered a program with some local institutions which grew the plants, but not to be put back into the Forest Preserve, plants that were given to volunteers who agreed to take care of the plants, enjoy the plant during the growing season, but bring the seeds back for the restoration effort along, all of the Forest Preserve District sites along the North Branch of the Chicago River. And that program has been very, very successful. And I keep thinking that maybe we could start something like that in the Calumet region. It would be a way of providing really nice plants for people and also providing seed for eggers, Beaubien, and other sites who could use the seed. Okay, Rosanna's garden. Rosanna is my sister. And I put this link in here only, or that particular reference in here because Rosanne oftentimes has plants because the natives do well, certain natives do well, and she's got extra plants. And I have given plants from Rosanne's garden and from other native plant gardeners that I know to my volunteers who come out to Eggers to help me, because that is essentially my list of people who would be interested. And so we've had probably 4 or 5 plant giveaways there as a result. And so it would be, as more people become interested in native plants, it's possible that down here in the Calumet region, we would start our own just little network of folks who have plants, who want plants, and who have plants to give away. And the final way to get plants is through plant rescues. In certain areas, when developers come through, there's a road that's going to come in or buildings that are going up. People who know the area might know there are really fine native plants that are going to be destroyed. And there have been plant rescues throughout the region at various times, but that's kind of, you got to be in the right place at the right time. But I've gotten some beautiful plants that way. And oh, the plant, did I tell you what the plant is in the background? What you're looking at in the background is Northern Prairie Dropseed. It turns a beautiful bronze pink in the fall. And this is considered by landscape architects one of the finest native grasses to just put into a native planting. They like that, and they like the little blue stem because they do not get tall. And they're very, very interesting accents in the landscape. Okay. The other 2 things that I'd like to consider when you're getting native plants is provenance and then something called nativars. Provenance simply means where does the plant come from? And you want plants that are grown close by in the region. You do not want plants from North Carolina. You do not really want plants from Oregon. You want to preserve, partially want to preserve the local gene pool, and you want plants that you know are going to survive an Illinois winter. And then nativars are, I think that's a term they're coining now for native plants that have been somehow, hybridized, genetically modified for certain characteristics. And that's okay on its own, but you don't know then if you're really helping the bees and the butterflies anymore. You don't know if those nativars are really going to be plants which help the populations that you want to help. So I don't, I would not plant nativars. The plant in the background is something called flowering spurge. It gets to be maybe 2-3 feet tall. And I love it because the deer don't. Okay, so that's some general background on gardens. And this is a history of a garden that I had around my house a long time ago. So that was my house once upon a time. And you can see that behind it was nothing but forest. That was forest preserve. The lot itself for this house was huge. It was 50 or 70 feet across and 200 to 300 feet deep. It was in the city of Chicago, right on the other side of that grove of trees there. You had the railroad, you had 4 major streets meeting in a really nasty set of intersections, but you can't tell that from where this house sat. Let's see. Okay, next slide.
Wait,
So
didn't it
here's-
start at 6 o'clock?
I'm sorry. I didn't hear that question. No. Oh, okay. I'll just keep going on. You can see the backyard here. The property ended at the end of the shed, the far end of the shed. The property had one huge swamp white oak right off of the porch, a huge bur oak there, very close to the shed. And in between the two, you see a small bur oak growing. This is the backyard in spring. The first 2 or 3 years that we lived there, we had a very scraggly backyard. The grass barely grew. There was barren spots. There was some hosta that the deer would eat to the ground every year. I had taken out my guidebook to check and see what native plants might be growing in the forest preserves, but I discovered what looked like baby plants, really tiny ones, only 1 inch or 2 high, growing throughout the scraggly lawn. So I said to my husband, well, maybe we shouldn't be mowing there anymore. Let's just see what happens if we stop mowing. I mean, it's not like the grass is really very good back there. So we went from this very, very scraggly grass in about 2 or 3 years to this. This is the backyard 2 or 3 years later. Without doing anything other than stopping the mowing, we ended up with about 45 different species of native plants, native woodland Illinois plants. And what you see in this picture is you see white trillium, you see the bellwort, there is a jack-in-the-pulpit down in the left-hand corner, there are shooting stars, there's wild ginger, just a whole bunch of plants. And none of these were planted. Okay, here's another view of the backyard a few weeks later. The flowers there in the right-hand corner are all shooting stars, more shooting stars. The colors on shooting stars vary from white to a kind of deep pink. Here's a better picture of some of the plants that were in that backyard. So we had bloodroot up in the upper left-hand corner. It's one of the very first plants to bloom in spring. And next to the bloodroot, by the way, it's named because the root is actually red. It's a corm, and the corm is blood red. The next plant over there is wild geranium. below the wild geranium is a red trillium, right in the middle of that picture. And then you see the shooting stars again. I happened to catch a bee actually feeding or collecting the pollen off of that shooting star. And then the last picture there is Virginia bluebells, and they're an interesting plant because they start out with pink buds. You can see a few pink buds there. The bud turns to purple, and then the flowers blue. Okay, side yard. I used to have montages of pictures. I would take photographs. So this is really a photograph of photographs put together to just give you an idea of the side yard. All right, so here's the side yard. Right off of this driveway, we had grass that baked in summer, and even the plantain hardly did well in the soil there. So I started planting some little blue stem and other plants right there along the yard. But that's when the Glenview Naval Air Station was given by the federal government to the village of Glenview. They were going to develop it. And the word went out that where the roads were going to go, it was fair game to get plants. And I probably dug out several hundred plants from the Glenview Naval Air Station as a plant rescue. So we went from these few little plants here to this. And what you're looking at is a lot of bluegrass, but also the yellow flowers are gray-headed coneflower, and the lilac flowers up at the top are bee balm, monarda. Also in this picture, you can see at the bottom of the very large photo, milkweed, and then there's also the Joe Pye above the milkweed there. And here are some of the other plants that were in that prairie. Top left-hand corner, that's something called lousewort, blooms in the spring. We do have several varieties of native phlox. This was one of them. This is a goldenrod in the upper right-hand corner. There were five different species of goldenrod in that prairie. This one happens to be rigid goldenrod. It does not get tall like the weedy goldenrod that you see in a lot of abandoned lots. This goldenrod is maybe 2.5, 3 feet tall. Kind of gray fuzzy leaves on it, gray-green fuzzy leaves. The bottom picture there, the asters, that is a smooth blue aster. And then we have sneezeweed, which I always thought looked like ballerina tutus, the petals, the reflex petals. And then the last picture there on the bottom left-hand corner, that is not, that was not from the prairie, but that was a gift plant. It was a cutting from a very large native honeysuckle, which one of the volunteers needed to trim back. And so I took the cuttings and I was able to raise the plants, and I had my own native honeysuckle. The flowers are very interesting. They only occur at the tips of the branches where the leaves fuse into this circle around the flower. Okay, more plants from the prairie. In the large picture, we have what's known as blue-eyed grass. The other ones are called violet wood sorrel. These are, again, early spring bloomers in the prairie. And we have two different butterfly weeds. We have orange butterfly weed, and we have this was butterfly weed, but this is a milkweed. It's in the milkweed family. And then the middle picture there is a whorled milkweed. And then the bottom picture is our native wild onion, what Chicago was named after. This one is a white flower, but the flowers can also be a deep pink, anything from light pink through deep pink. More plants from the garden. This was Spring Beauty. This is another early spring bloomer. I'm told that there are thousands of these in the lawns at Calumet Park. This year, I plan to see it for myself. The next picture is the plant of which you can see thousands at Eggers. That is the flower for Mayapple. Below that is our native lily. And the final picture there is that native rose, Illinois rose in flower. Again, you can see the leaflets are 3, not 5 or 7 or 9. Even in fall, the native plants have color. So that leaf in the upper left-hand corner, that is a wild geranium leaf. And they can get to be a stunning red various times in the fall. The large picture shows something called Short's aster. And several of our native plants really turn a beautiful burgundy color, have a burgundy color leaf on them in the fall. Elm leaf goldenrod also does that. And then the small picture there shows penstemon. And then the final picture is the berries on the native honeysuckle. Okay, and then let's see, I think there's one more. And then finally, my last slide, winter. Even in winter, there is interest with native plants. I mean, there is that winter interest aspect of it. This is my little blue stem grass in winter. I mean, literally the sunlight dances on the seeds of this plant. And then the final picture, that is a very tall, like probably 8.5 feet tall, Joe Pye weed next to the house. And with that, that's it. And I'd be glad to take questions.
Can you recommend any plants that would do well in partial shade, like under our big oak tree in the parkway?
Well, just about any Illinois woodland plant would probably do well. The other things to consider is whether or not it's really dry there, or if, you know, water puddles there after a rain. There are, yes, things like wild ginger, if you're looking for a ground cover, is a great ground cover. In fact, places like the Botanic Garden uses wild ginger. If you want what amounts to a short grass that you would never mow, there is something called oak sedge, which has been used extensively for creating the grass-like look without needing any mowing ever. But if you look, for instance, on that Possibility Place Nursery website, they will be able to give you lists of things. Going to a place like the Botanic Garden as well, they have a great wildflower, a woodland wildflower area where you can see the plants.
Thank you.
Marianne, I have a question. I'm growing
Sure.
a native. I'm growing a Native American medicinal and edible garden, and I'm trying to find some, not only wild leeks, but also some more wild strawberries, blueberries, and others. And where can I get them?
Well, you can get them from nurseries. I don't know if the Field Museum is ever going to offer seeds for those plants, but they could. I mean, you could specifically ask whether or not that's going to be part of what they have. The nurseries, as well as the Morton Arboretum, for instance, and the Chicago Botanic Garden, will probably have the plants you need. Those are rather standard plants. So, I mean, those are not really exotic things. So you could probably find them at nurseries. I don't know of any gardeners who have any who might be able to give them to you, though. If I do hear of any, I will let you know.
Okay, and what about wild ginseng and golden seal?
Those actually, plants like that have been dug out of the forest preserve by plant poachers. I do not know of, you could probably get those as well through the garden centers. You know, check out the Possibility Place website just to see what they might have. But some of the rare, of those plants that you mentioned are rare in the wild as well. They would probably go for a premium in the garden centers, in those nurseries.
I have a question. I'm sorry.
You ever tried groundnut or wild onion and Jerusalem and sunchoke before? I have a ton of sunchokes at my community farm.
I never grew plants for food. I grew them because they needed their place in the sun or in the shade. I'm afraid I can't really speak to your or answer your question other than to say, no, I don't have. In terms of wild garlic, I had wild garlic in the garden there at my other house. And it was the beauty of the wild garlic plant, Allium canadense, I think is the Latin for it, is that it's really easy to grow. So I would always have wild garlic for family dinners if anybody wanted any.
You have a lot of wild garlic, because I could use some more wild garlic for eating and healing.
You know, I'm afraid I had to give up that house. It was one of my sorrows, one of my life sorrows, but I had to give up that house. So I have no source for that anymore. I can ask my sister though, if she's got any growing. And if she does, I'll let you know.
Okay.
I have a question about what you had said earlier when you said you just let the grass grow. You just let it go.
Yeah.
So, and you were within the city limits at the time?
Yes.
So code enforcement did not come after you for that?
It was my backyard. And the grass was so weak to begin with that there was just no, it just really didn't grow. And the natives that came up, I mean, that was my backyard. And frankly, it was beautiful. It was just a gorgeous.
Oh, it's very beautiful. But also that came in, all that stuff came in from the woods, I would think, right?
It was because that house was originally where the woods was. And the plants, some of those plants were just hanging on, waiting for their chance. So yeah, so that was not something that, someone in the middle of Chicago would normally get, even though that was in the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would not see that. You would simply not see that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I was taking furious notes about all the plants that you mentioned here, so that's very helpful. And the websites.
Sure, good. Yeah, the Field Museum, I swear by the Field Museum website.
Okay.
The other thing about the Field Museum is their guides. I think they're simply called field guides. And they have field guides on sedges, on the monarch butterflies, on fall plants, on seeds of plants. They've got, I think, 20 or 30 or 50 different guides. And they're really great to have as references, just spot references. Very helpful, very helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I know the truth.
Other questions? No more questions then? Well, Marianne, thank you very much. We filled up the hour and we probably have 1 or 2 minutes left. So I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. And let me see, who do we have next time? We on May 2nd, Calumet Revisited will feature Alan Rezitar, and of the Field Museum. I was just wondering, does anybody know if he's still at the Field Museum? Okay. But anyway, and he'll be speaking on amphibians and reptiles of the region. And very familiar with wolf-light. So I'll thank everybody for